Once we have created and posted free text invoices, we have the option of creating free text invoice corrections. When you correct an invoice that has been posted, a corrected invoice is created where you can modify the invoice and post it with new values. When you post the corrected invoice, a canceling invoice is created, which brings the combined balance of the original invoice and the canceling invoice to a zero amount. In this demonstration, we'll first verify that the license configuration key is on for free text invoice correction, and then we'll make corrections on invoices. To show how this free text invoicing correction works, we're going to go back into the invoice that I'd created earlier. We can see our rental income equipment down here. Maybe the issue with this invoice was that the price was incorrect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the ribbon at the top and choose the correct invoice button. But before we get to that, I should mention that often the first time you go in to try to do this, you may see that that button, that section is missing. That's because by default this is not in the license configuration, so it needs to be enabled in the license configuration in system administration. So would be if you'd need to go to your system administrator and ask them to enable that functionality, and it's under general ledger. It's not under accounts receivable. Free text invoice correction is a checkbox in the configuration, and once that is checked off and in the way that it's done for changing the license configuration, once that's all completed, then this button will now appear and will become available. I went all the way into the body of the invoice to review how that invoice had been entered and posted originally, but the correct invoice button is available also if you go back to the listing screen in the same place, and that's where we're going to do it for this demonstration, but either way is fine. I'm going to click correct invoice as long as I have that invoice selected. Select the reason code, and I'm going to say yes, it's an error. It was a correction of a data entry error, which was that the price was incorrect. And the canceling invoice date defaults to the original date of the invoice, but I can change it to any other date as appropriate. I'm going to then create the corrected invoice and see what happens with that. We get a message that says correcting invoice and the invoice number, and then if we scroll down to the invoice that we're correcting and then scroll to the right, that's this line, we'll see that we have in the correction column it says original. And that of course then implies that there is a correction somewhere else, which if we scroll up, yes there is. There's the corrected invoice, and we'll see that it is not yet posted, and it is the same date to the same vendor. So we can go in and see what we've done here into that invoice, and this says in the up there the correcting invoice was original invoice number, and we see that we have the same information that we had on the original invoice, but it is not yet posted, and we can make any correction we need to do. If I wanted to delete this invoice entirely, I could, saying that I just wanted to correct the old one and the new one won't exist. But in this case, I'm going to make a correction. I can really correct anything on here that's available, and so I'm going to correct the price and say that price shouldn't have been $1,000. It should have been $1,250. And that's the only thing I'm going to change I'm going to make. But I could change the GL distribution. I could do anything I want. So add additional charges even. I'm going to post this just as I would any other invoice. And we have the pop-up on post free text invoice. We'll click OK. So the operation is completed and we have successfully posted, as it says in the message. Let's go back to our listing screen and see what has happened. We're going to go in and we're going to refresh that screen, and we can see then that we have our original invoice, our corrected invoice,
And we also have a canceling invoice, which is created when we post the corrected invoice. So we have 3 invoices, and this has a different invoice sequence that we've set up in our number sequencing, just to indicate a corrected invoice. A canceled invoice has a C in there, which is not a bad idea. And so what we've done then is created 2 more invoices when we do the correction and post it. And what happens then is that this original invoice is then reversed by the canceling invoice. They are automatically settled against each other, and then the corrected invoice is the one that is now open and available for cash collection and accounts receivable from the customer.